So welcome to the Service Dog Foundations course. This is called So You Want to Train Your Own Service Dog. The goal of this course is to make sure that everybody has a really solid foundation and understanding of what service dog training is like, and to make sure that they have the skills that they need going forward. I guess I can use this version now if they're not going to play my sounds. So for those of you who don't know me very well, I'm Carol Millman. I have a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I took all the behavior modification, operant conditioning courses I could. I trained a rat to press a lever. I did all of that stuff. Then I went and got a diploma from the University of Guelph in veterinary technology, which is basically animal nursing. And I got to do an internship at the Vancouver Aquarium, which was super cool. I also was the director of medical services at a veterinary clinic for a number of years. So I have a good grounding in animal health, but you guys are here for my service dog stuff. I apprenticed at Pacific Assistance Dog Society from 2008 until 2010. And I trained service dogs there for people in wheelchairs, manual and motor. I also trained hearing alert dogs and facility therapy dogs. I've been training privately since 2011. My business partner, Amelia, and I branched off in 2011. We've been training service dogs quite frequently throughout this time, because every time somebody called PADS and said, how do I train my own service dog? They would say, well, just go to Carol and Amelia. So it became more and more of our main business. And here we are today. So you want to train your own service dog. It seems like there are two equally strong opinions that people like to hold about owner training service dogs. The first group seem to think that any dog belonging to somebody with a disability can be taught to heel and be labeled a service dog, with all the privileges that that title bestows. The other group thinks that if the dog hasn't been raised by a charitable institution, it can't possibly be a service dog. And of course, as is usually the case, both opinions are wrong. The truth is really like a shade of gray in between. There are some pros and cons to being an owner trainer. It is quite possible to owner train a service dog to proper service dog standards, but it's not always easy. Obviously, a random person getting a random dog and raising and training it without any outside expertise has a really low chance of ending up with a dog that rivals the ones produced by professional institutions. Professional institutions spend a lot of time and effort and money breeding, raising, and training their service dogs, and they still have a success rate of usually less than 50%. So with all of that effort put into it, what are the chances of any one person succeeding with their dog? That's very much the attitude of people who work at these institutions, because they know how much work goes into it and still how difficult it is to get reliable success rates. But I have found that owner trainers do have a few factors working in your favor. The dogs don't have to change handlers. In a service dog school, they're puppy raised by their puppy raisers. Then they're put into a kennel environment and they are trained by professional trainers. And then they're placed again with the person with the disability. So they go through multiple handler changes, and quite frankly, a lot of dogs can't handle it and they fall apart. And so then people say, okay, the service dog work is not for them, and they get placed in a pet home, or they get retrained elsewhere as a drug dog or something. But your dogs don't have to go through all of that. Your dogs are already with their end user, and they can form a bond with you while they are learning, and you're not going to have to like take them and place them with somebody else. And I think that that creates a huge benefit that helps a lot of dogs get through that probably wouldn't have got through in a service dog institution. I also find that because my clients get, 6 months or a year of intensive dog handling lessons, they don't tend to backslide. They got their dogs to this point and they are intending to keep them there. So while the dogs at PADS often had to come back to be like retrained, I find that my clients' dogs just get better and better. There are some things that I have found that really signal that an owner trainer and their dog are going to be successful. These are things that when I see them, I feel very good about their chances. And the first is simply the handler enjoying working with and teaching their dog. If you don't enjoy the act of like teaching a new skill to the dog or showing a dog how to do something, if that feels like a chore, you're not going to do it as much. And obviously practice makes perfect. So if you're not practicing as much, you're not going to progress as fast, which means actually you're going to feel more frustrated and less motivated. And so the people who really enjoy the work and put the work into their dog are much, much more likely to be successful. And then of course, there's whether or not the dog is suited to the job. If you ask a dog to do something that they really aren't designed to do, it's going to take a lot more work to help them be able to do it. And some dogs are frankly like, yeah, no, I have no interest in doing that. Please don't make me. And if that happens, it doesn't matter how skilled the handler is. You know, if you could turn any dog into a service dog, then service dog institutions would have a 100% success rate because the professional trainers would just make the dog be able to do it. But they don't. So if you don't have the right dog, it's not going to happen. And even if you do have the right dog, there's going to be times where you hit tricky bits. The dog has an unexpected struggle with a fear of pillows or a fear of statues, or they cannot keep it together when they see another dog. And that takes time and effort and patience to get over. And so the person has to be willing to put in the time and the effort. Even if they have a great dog, there's still always going to be sticky bits that they have to work through. The next thing is that the handler's got to be dedicated to their dog's fundamental well-being. Dogs know when their owners are not prioritizing their feelings and their needs, and those dogs are far less likely to prioritize their owner's feelings and needs. They're like, yeah, no, it's my job to get my needs met because I can't rely on you. So if I have to choose between meeting my own needs and helping you out, I'm going to meet my own needs. So I find that when the owners are really committed to making sure that their dog is happy and has their needs met, the dog is far more dedicated to making sure their handler is happy and gets their needs met. And that leads to a good bond. So when I see these sort of nice green flags, I usually feel very good about the team's chances of success. You notice we call them teams. It's really important to understand that a service dog team is really a teamwork dynamic. It is not a matter of dominance. Dominance theory is not scientifically sound anyway, and I could go on for an hour about why that's the case. But even if it worked great for pet dogs, even if there was lots of evidence behind it for pet dogs, it wouldn't work for service dogs. Because the whole point of needing a dog to help you out as a companion or to help you with your disability is that you have a deficit in a particular area, right? And it's okay for us to have deficits. Dogs have deficits in that they don't have opposable thumbs. So that's a pretty big deficit from their point of view, especially when they want to open the cupboard and help themselves to a snack. We've got the opposable thumbs. They've got the great nose. We have to help each other out. Service dogs have to think for themselves and have to help their person do things their person can't do for themselves. And so it really takes teamwork of helping each other, saying, okay, I've got the opposable thumbs, you've got the great nose. Let's put these two things together and make a great team. One of the reasons why you can't just have the do as I say mindset when you're working with a service dog is that a lot of the time service dogs have to actively disobey what they've been told to do. If it's a guide dog and they've been told to go forward, but going forward results in everybody getting hit by a car, they have to disobey. And for a lot of other service dogs, they have to use their brains because we don't know things. The whole point of an alert dog is to tell you things you don't know. So you can't tell a dog to tell you that your blood sugar is high if you don't know your blood sugar is high. You can't tell them what to do when you're waking up from a seizure because you're busy waking up from a seizure. All we can do is teach them to use their best judgment, and then they have to choose to do it themselves. So do as I say doesn't work very well for those types of situations. So this is a cool little video. It's just a simple one that really demonstrates the intelligent disobedience principle at work. A guide dog has to lead their blind handler where the blind handler wants to go, but sometimes they have to disobey what they're told. And this is a cool example of it here. He's telling the guy to go forward, telling him to go forward. And the dog doesn't go forward until he knows his owner knows about that barrier on the side there. Pretty cool. And that's what guide dog work is all about. The other reason that service dog work really needs to be team-based and not dominance-based is because you're really getting into a slippery slope when it comes to slavery. I don't love Encyclopedia Britannica's definition because it's in the past tense, as if there's no more slavery in the world, and we all know that's not true. But it said, slavery is a form of dependent labor performed by a non-family member. The slave was deprived of personal liberty and the right to move about geographically as he desired. There were likely to be limits on his capacity to make choices with regard to his occupation and sexual partners as well. Well, all of that really applies to dogs. They're not free to move about geographically as they desire. We constrain their family liberty, their personal liberty. We decide when and how and if they breed. And we have decided that we want our dogs to be service dogs. And they didn't really get consulted in that. So we don't want to risk slavery. We really don't want to risk slavery. So we need to make sure that the dog is doing the job because they want to do the job. There's some things we need to keep in mind. We need to remember that our dogs have very few legal rights. If we want to force our dogs to go with us everywhere and pick up our socks for us, we can. And there is no lawyer they can turn to. They can't file a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal. They've got no choice. They're not free to leave the relationship. Pet dogs and service dogs are essentially our captives in that they're not free to leave. So, and even if they were, they can't really survive in the world that we've raised them in. They have no opposable thumbs. They can't open door handles. They can't turn on taps. They can't order a pizza. They rely on us for a lot of things. And at the same time, they have access to knowledge that we don't have access to. Like your dog's nose can literally see through time. They can know what happened on the sidewalk yesterday by sniffing it. They don't need CCTV. They don't need webcams. They know what happened. They can smell it. And they can smell things that we don't have any other way of detecting. Science has tried to make digital noses many times and has not succeeded yet. We don't understand smell very well, but dogs live and breathe it. So we have to maintain a feeling of humility when it comes to the way we approach our dogs, because they know a lot of things we don't know, and yet they have very few rights. So if we want to be careful that we don't run roughshod over them, we can gain the benefits of their knowledge, but we have to be willing to have that level of humility first. The other things we need to remember is that, oops, why? What happened there? How go backwards? There we go. Let's try this again. So dogs entered this relationship with humans voluntarily. They're not animals that we domesticated. They domesticated themselves. And we're going to go into this more in future lessons about how they chose to come and work with us. But ultimately, they decided, hey, these humans could be pretty useful. Let's go and cooperate with them. And our pet dogs are not actually representative of the average dog, because most of the world's dog population are free living beings that choose to hang out in human areas like cities and villages. And they could go back to the wild. They don't. They choose to hang out with us. And since dogs have this long history of helping us out voluntarily, there's just no reason to believe that we need to force them to do anything to help us. They're actually very willing to do so. They are volunteers. So case in point, Canine Assistance in Georgia, which is a service dog school that has they're a large school. They have a 25-year relationship with the Milk-Bone Company. They're a big school, and they no longer even make the dogs sit or lie down. They have discovered that as long as they give the dogs unconditional love and acceptance, the dogs can learn to do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I have to get my sound working here so I can play this next bit for you guys. I wonder why. I just wanted to make sure everyone could hear it before I
do the right thing. Yeah, but trusting that is really scary.
Okay.
Yeah, for a lot of
people. We used to tell people, and this breaks my heart. We were doing the best we could, so I'm not going to be mad at us. But we used to have to tell people that it'd be a long time, maybe a year to a year and a half, before they were really in sync with their dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally realized a few years ago that what that was it was a year to a year and a half before people forgot the advice we had given them and just got out of the dog's way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah. And myself included.
They want to do the right thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. They really want to do the right thing.
Yeah. But trusting that is really scary. Yeah, for a lot of people.
Well, and we have found that when dogs feel secure, one of the most remarkable things about all of this was I started sort of this journey to figure out if not positive reinforcement, which was the good way in my mind, then what? I certainly didn't want to go to positive punishment. So where did we go? And as I started researching social learning and how we could do things in ways that made the dog feel more comfortable and secure with us rather than the opposite, increasing insecurity, I realized that, and that was my goal, to help them feel less anxious.
Mm-hmm.
They were counting, they were reading words, they're counting objects. They're the most extraordinary things you've ever seen. They're fast mapping by reasoning through exclusion. It's stunning. And it turns out, I think, that when dogs...
So anyway, Jennifer Arnold has been super passionate about getting out of dog's way because their service dog school have kind of gone through all of it. They started out with the really old style traditional training with like choke collars and stuff because they just didn't know any better. And then they went to clicker training, and now they've dumped clicker training. They teach everything through social learning, do as I do, getting the dogs to imitate, and just bombing them with unconditional love. And the results they're seeing are truly remarkable. I would love to go down there. So let's talk about how friendship works better. Friendship is, I went back to Encyclopedia Britannica for this, characterized by 5 defining features. It's a dyadic relationship, meaning that it involves a series of interactions between 2 individuals. It's recognized that both members of the relationship, and it's characterized by a bond or tie of reciprocated affection. They like each other. It's not obligatory. They choose to form the friendship with each other. There's no formal duties or legal obligations. It's entirely voluntary. And it's egalitarian in nature. Everybody's equal. Now, we all know that there are some friends that are better at some things. So if I make plans to go out to dinner with my friend who is a real planner, she usually decides what day we're going, what time, where we're eating, what movie we're seeing. In that, she goes, here's what's playing, pick one of these 2. Here are our choices for where to eat. Pick one of these 2. Because she knows that I do better when I'm given a couple of small decisions. If she says, where are we eating? I'll go, I don't know. So she goes, well, I'm in the mood for Greek. Do you want to do Greek? And I'll say, yes. And she'll say, okay, we're doing Greek. And I'll be like, good, yay. That's friendship. She takes the leadership role because I get analysis paralysis and she doesn't. But it's egalitarian in that if I say, no, I'm not in the mood for Greek, she'll say, okay, and we'll go do something else. Why? Okay. Now, I want to, guys, you need to kind of prepare your hearts. We're going to have to watch a couple of things that really hurt my heart. But I want you guys to watch it because these are owner trainers and they are posting their stuff on YouTube for other owner trainers to watch about training their service dogs. And I want you guys to watch that and ask yourselves whether these guys are really working with their friends or whether they're engaging in essentially canine slavery. So here's the first video. Again, the dog's not injured or hurt or anything in the video. I'm not interested in really watching that, but still watch it and just sort of listen to the attitude and think about it.
This chain correction collar. The first one I got was too big, and that slips over his head. It doesn't undo like a prong. It slips over his head, so it can't ride high. So I don't want anybody saying it should be high on the neck. It can't be high on the neck because it has to slip over his head. It doesn't undo. So that just barely slips over his head with some force.
Notice the nose lifting.
When it tightens down,
that's
it doesn't tighten all the way. And it gives that pop sound that we're looking for. Focus. Good. Wait. Heel. Good. Wait. This door is tricky with a phone. Heel. My shoelace is untied. Good. That time I didn't have the e-collar in my hand because I had the door. Gosh, this is so tricky. Yep.
All right. What do you guys notice?
That is one sad-looking dog.
That's a sad dog, isn't it?
I hate e-collars. I hate those kind of leashes and the popping sound that made me feel sick. I'm sorry. I do animal rescue too, and I really don't like that. But I understand why you're showing it, Carol.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts my heart too, and I definitely do not watch this stuff for fun. It's fills me with all kinds of unnameable emotions. But the thing is that these are what owner trainers are sharing on YouTube with other owner trainers.
Sickening.
And it's just, you know, like, if we're going to be owner trainers of service dogs ourselves, we have to understand that this is what a lot of the owner trainers service dog community thinks of for training. And so one of the big goals of this course is to help people really see things from a different perspective, because this is simply not how service dogs are trained. Yeah. And Jen says that the dog's body language shows he's afraid of punishment, right? Now, how can your dog
with e-collar getting zapped? Like, ugh.
Yeah. Well, it's like she's got an e-collar and a prong. Like at this point, she goes on to say,
"Why does she get a cattle prod next?" Like, ugh.
Right, and it's like, so I mean, how is this dog a service dog? You know, if she's forcing him to be like this, I mean, everything in this dog's body language tells me he wants to be somewhere else.
No, that pop collar and doing the pop is what Orion's first trainer told me to do with him.
Yeah. You know, and the leash correction thing. And the thing is that the martingale, I have no problem with martingales. If they're on correctly, a lot of dogs like them. They're nice and loose. They can scratch comfortably underneath them. They slip on and off. But when they're used for that chain correcting noise, yeah. But it's like, you know, she's been using a prong collar, so she's looking for that chain yank noise that the dog's developed this horrible association with. Like she's deliberately, yeah. So, not a fan of that. Not what we're looking for when we're looking to teach a dog to be our friend and our companion. Just really not ideal.
All right, I got
now I've got the sound going on here. We're not even going to watch a whole lot of this because it stresses me out so much, but this is just another example.
I really want this to be an all positive environment, positive vibes only, please.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
I'm excited but nervous at the same time. I genuinely don't know how he's going to act. I want him to be as well behaved as possible. And
okay, so she wants it to be a nice, positive experience for the dog.
Yeah, I'm working on the building now. I will move it.
yes, sit. Good boy. So now we're just at the front, waiting for him to give me some eye contact before we go inside the store. Leave it. Good boy. Hello. Good boy, Astro. Astro is a bit distracted here because his sweet elderly couple walked by to compliment him. Thank you.
Of course he's distracted. There's a lot to see here.
Leave it? Yes. Hello. Leave it, Astro. For future training purposes, I will fix the positioning of his body. You can see his body is in front of me rather than next to or behind me. But in this case, I'm praising him for sitting so still because he gets really excited to meet new people.
So that yellow thing you saw briefly in her hand, that was a shock remote control for the shock collar he's wearing.
You can see how his mindset completely changes. He's in working mode now. Throughout the video, you will see the changes in his heel and the way he engages with me. Good. Yes. Hello.
So she's giving him cookies for being good. But
this way. Our Herm Springer prong collar came in the mail, and I'm really excited to use the prong collar for better communication with Astro. I prefer a prong collar over a flat collar, as a prong distributes equal pressure on his neck for corrections rather than choking his trachea.
So, I mean, that's all we need to watch there, right? Again, you know, this is someone who really wants to do right by her dog. You know, this is not someone who hates dogs. This is someone who really wants to do right, but she believes that the dog needs to be corrected as much as rewarded. She's saying she wants it to be a positive experience for the dog, but she's holding an e-collar stimulation remote control in her hand, and she's talking about how excited she is to use a prong collar. This is the owner training service dog community, right? Like, yeah, if you know that you could mess up, if you mess up, someone will hurt you, that's never going to be a positive experience for you. It's just not. Like, it's not going to be a positive experience for you. And that's in what I see in that dog's behavior. You know, Aussies are incredibly eager to please. They want to do good with every fiber of their being. You could not find a breed that is more dedicated to being a good dog. They're not always great at it, but they try. Boy, do they try. And they never need that kind of level of correction. I think that's an excellent way to raise the dog's stress levels. And it's certainly not a good way to make friends with the dog.
Good morning, everyone.
I want the next one. Okay, you guys ready to feel better now? Here is a video of a guide dog being trained by an actual professional service dog institution. And you will notice the difference between the way this dog is learning and the way that the owner trainers I find on YouTube are doing it.
Guide dogs. A day in the life of Forrest, a guide dog in training. Forrest is a Labrador cross golden retriever. He's currently training to become a life-changing guide dog. Forrest's volunteer fosterer takes him to one of our regional centres in the morning for training, where he's given lots of interaction and canine enrichment to enjoy. Forrest heads outside with guide dog mobility specialist Emily to visit a supermarket. Being confident in these busier locations is an important trait to become a qualified guide dog. Emily and Forrest then work on navigating their way around certain obstacles in public, such as roadworks that are blocking part of the pavement. Forrest and trainee guide dog Bella then enjoy a free run together, both having a lot of fun. It's back to the office for a midday nap and cuddle with trainee guide dog Dane. Forrest is also given an interactive ball filled with some of his food. We integrate a mix of canine enrichment into our dog's day-to-day schedule to help stimulate their senses and improve their well-being. We then practice some cooperative care behaviours, including the bucket game and chin rest. These behaviours teach our dogs that they have a choice in being handled and promotes a good association with having a physical exam. By giving the dog a choice, it empowers them, building their confidence and trust. Forreston helps the Academy Trainee Guide Dog trainers learn place and under, which are two important non-working guide dog behaviours for a future guide dog partnership. Emily and Forrest continue more working behaviours with an obstacle course and targeting a traffic light box, followed by lots of treats and a game of tug. After a day of learning, Forrest enjoys a cuddle with the staff before his volunteer fosterer arrives to take him back home for a well-earned rest.
So that's a lot better, isn't it? That's the professionals. And that's what we're aiming for. We want to be owner trainers that train the way that professional institutions train their dogs, to be friends and partners, not frightened or stressed out servants. And that's basically what a huge part of this course is going to be, is showing you how to do it like they do it and not the way those other guys do it. And I know that all of you guys want to do it the right way anyway, but we need to understand when we interact with other owner trainers and when we're representing owner trainers, we need to understand what some of them are doing, so that you can understand why there's so much pushback about it. Now, oh, next one. Now here's my girl. This is Gretel when she was 5 months old, to show you that I can do it. This is my business partner, Amelia, working with Gretel.
Go by on the hillside. Thank you.
That leash is clipped to her harness.
I'm going to try and physically avoid it. Perfect. Perfect.
So she didn't need any corrections. Even at one point she stopped and she gave it a long look, and Amelia kept her leash loose the whole time. That was her choice to do that. And that's what we want. Dogs will choose to do it. They will choose to be good. We do not need to threaten them in order to get them to do it.
All of that aside, it can't be completely egalitarian. We do need to be the team leader, right? Like, yes, the dog needs to be our partner and our friend, and sometimes we need them to make judgment calls, but ultimately we need to be the team leader, frankly, because you are older than your dog and you have a lot more on your agenda. You know where your doctor's appointment is, and you know what time it is and how to get there. Your dog doesn't know any of those things. So even in cases where you have guide dogs, the blind person is still telling the dog where to go. The guide dog's just supposed to disobey them if the blind person gives gives a command that's based on false information. We understand human laws. We understand human social norms. And we have godlike powers. We can turn lights on and off. We can order pizza. We have those magic opposable thumbs that make water flow out of metal taps. And we can climb into inanimate objects and make them carry us where we want to go. So the dog is all for us being the team leader. They just want to have a fair say. And we need to make sure that we give them the power to make decisions, especially in situations where they have more information than we do. Just like with any team, there's a division of labor. It is your job to ensure that your dog doesn't violate important human rules or do unsafe things like wander into a road, jump on a child, knock over old ladies, eat sandwiches off of the table at the restaurant. Your dog doesn't understand human rules, and why should they? They're dogs. So it's your job to make sure that those things are understood and explained and do not happen. It's also your job as the team leader to foster a spirit of teamwork and trust, to remember that there's no I in team, and to set the culture of we're having teamwork, we are a team. After that, it's your dog's job to learn how they can contribute to the team, because you will be teaching them, and to learn the things that you need help with and how they can help. It's not your job to control your dog's body or mind beyond basic safety and propriety. It's your dog's job to sit if they've been told that they could get a cookie if they sit. It's not your job to make your dog sit. You don't have the right to dictate their body positions. However, if they decide that jumping on an old lady is a great idea, then it's your job to come in and say, yeah, no, you can't do that. But beyond safety and propriety, your dog's body is theirs and the choices they make are theirs. So one of the other things we're going to talk a lot about in the upcoming weeks is figuring out what's forbidden, what's fine, and what's fantastic. It's your job to physically prevent your dog from engaging in forbidden behaviors. Forbidden behaviors are those unsafe or horribly inappropriate things that dogs don't understand about. So you need to physically stop the dog from running in front of a car, and physically stop the dog from jumping up on old ladies. Take steps to ensure that your dog is not going to engage in behavior that you consider to be unsafe or horribly inappropriate. If the dog does something that is normal and is not horribly unsafe or inappropriate, but maybe you just don't care about or love, you just shrug at it. That's fine, sure. When your dog does something that you love, that you really want them to do more, it's your job to get really enthusiastic about it. So you might, for example, be on a leash walk. And if your dog runs up ahead and pulls, you're going to say, nope, that is forbidden. I'm not going to allow that. And you'll just refuse to move and refuse to let your dog go forward while they're pulling. However, if they decide to sort of follow along with you and sniff and look around, and they're maybe not being the world's most impressive healing dog, but they're not causing you any problems, that's fine. If they decide to fall into heel position and trot next to you, staring deeply into your eyes, that's fantastic. And that's when you're going to bring out a bunch of praise and treats and have a little party. Everything your dog does should be falling into one of these three categories. It's your job to make sure the forbidden stuff is not happening or encouraged, and to make sure you encourage the heck out of the fantastic stuff. It's your dog to decide what they're going to do with all of that information. Another thing we're going to spend a lot of time on is public etiquette and how to make sure it's your absolute #1 priority when you take your dog out in public. Training an untrained dog in stores is a really risky business. Your #1 priority has to be to ensure that you and your dog make other people feel good and happy, not negative or unhappy. Because how people feel about you and your dog will affect the next person they run into with a service dog, especially an owner-trained service dog. And owner-trained service dogs have a pretty nasty reputation out there, thanks to a lot of fake service dogs and untrained dogs. So you have to remember the prime directive, which is that every time you go out with your dog in a service dog vest, you have to be a role model, both to your dog to show them how we behave in public, and to the public. Disability access and advocacy is much bigger than you and your dog. So it's absolutely important that you not make things harder for other owner trainers. Okay? Super important. Let's help each other, not make things worse for each other. It is obstructing anyone's progress. Your dog may not approach or make physical contact with any human being unless you tell them it is okay to do so. Your dog cannot occupy public seats, they cannot mess with store displays, and they must not bark except in emergencies for attention. And it is your job to make sure if your dog tries to go up to someone, you stop with the leash. You cannot let them engage in these behaviors. And we will talk about how to make sure that they don't. Your dog should also be clearly and obviously happy when you're out and in the store. Happy dogs make people feel good about you, and they make people feel good about your dog. And that's in line with the Prime Directive, not to mention the basic ethics we already talked about. Dogs who enjoy their time out with you will want to come along next time. If your dog has a miserable time, they probably decide that they're just going to want to be a pet and stay home, thanks very much. If you want your dog to enjoy coming out with you, you have to make sure that training experiences are fun and enjoyable, and that benefits everybody. What not to do? Do not demand access to no pet stores. If your dog is not 100% skill and manners trained, you have an in-training dog, not a service dog, and you have no legal right to enter. Challenging a business at the Human Rights Tribunal requires you to prove that you needed your dog at that moment. And if you were training the dog and they're still learning how to be a service dog, you didn't need them. They needed you to teach them. So you're never going to win at the Human Rights Tribunal if your dog is not fully, completely trained. So don't challenge them. If you are loud or demanding or unpleasant, it makes people feel bad around you, and that affects how they're going to feel about the next service dog team they meet. It just makes disability access and advocacy worse and more difficult for people. So sometimes we have to deal with really frustrating situations, but we cannot be loud or demanding or do anything that's going to make them feel worse about owner trainers. So if you run into problems in stores, you should agree to leave, but you can explain that it's necessary for dogs to train in public in order to learn. Generally, I recommend that people train their dogs in pet-friendly stores at first. We'll talk about more in later lessons, but you can just explain that it's important to train dogs in stores, but then agree to leave. Remind them that if your dog were fully trained and qualified, you'd have legal right as a disabled person to bring your medical equipment into the store, and explain to them that a fully trained dog would never cause them problems and would have the backing of the Human Rights Tribunal. You can offer them informational pamphlets or ask for their emails so you can send them some more information for next time. Try not to take it personally and attribute it to malice if people are refusing your dog. Usually it's just poor education or lack of understanding. People just want to keep their jobs. And if their manager is going to yell at them for letting a service dog in the store, they might ask you to leave, but it might not even be their decision. Their manager might have told them to come out and do it. If you've ever worked in retail, you know what it can be like. So try to maintain some empathy for the person kicking you out too, and try to remember that it's likely an education issue, not personal. So, is everybody ready to get learning? I've touched on a few really key topics today. Everything is going to be discussed much more in depth, and there's going to be a lot more practical stuff too, right? From holding a leash correctly, how to juggle treats. The first things we're going to deal with, though, are going to be getting yourself into the right mindset for teamwork training and getting your dog into that mindset. We're going to go into more details of access rights, how to train in public, the physicality of navigating stores. And we're going to talk more about understanding your dog and communicating clearly with your dog so that you guys can work together properly. And we're going to go from there. You guys are going to be learning a lot in the next few weeks. You can always reach out to me with questions. We're going to have a Q&A now. And for those who have missed the lesson or are listening to this on recording, it's okay to email me questions or tune in at the next session and ask questions then, okay?
All right. I'm open for questions. Does anybody have any, or comments even, that they want to make? Marta.
My dog is a Sheltie. So my dog he's one, so he tends to bark. And he barks, you know, he goes around the yard, barks all four corners. And then when we're starting to walk, he'll bark a little bit. And I always try to tell him good, quiet. But, you know, I don't want to, as you say, you know, not let him be himself. And then as we walk a little farther, he seems to be okay, or he's doing okay. So, you know, I'm really glad you showed the difference between a positive and the bad devices. Like, thank you for that. So, you know, I know we're going to start sessions and you're going to show me some tips and tricks and things like that. But Shelties are barkers.
Yes, they are.
That's their breed.
Yeah, they are. But usually the barking comes up when they're excited. It's usually an excitement thing. So usually at that point, it's a matter of managing their excitement levels. So I know we practiced that a little bit the one time I worked with Odin. By the way, I showed a picture of to a friend yesterday because my husband came down the stairs and said, "Do you really have a Sheltie named Odin next week?" And I was like, "Yes." And a friend of mine was like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "Oh no, you haven't even seen the picture yet." And I showed her a picture and she went, "Oh my gosh." My dog's reincarnation. Anyway, yeah. So it's a lot of it is managing excitement. And the important thing is to, you know, he's being himself. And we can't say, "Oh, well, you can't ever bark." But we also have to say, "You know what? I think you're too excited and we're just going to wait here for you to calm down." And the big thing, especially is when we start moving into stores, is to make sure we don't overstimulate him, so that we have to figure out where his bark threshold is and teach him how to keep himself below it. And that's kind of a skill to learn. It's emotional self-regulation, which, you know, young dogs are not particularly skilled at. The other thing I find that tends to set Shelties off tends to be sudden noises. But again, outside of their territory, they tend to be better. Stacy, you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah. So one of the things that our goofy dog has taught herself is if the kid's getting elevated, the dog will actually bark at her. And I remember that. It's caused a problem once in the mall. We had security come up and go, "If your dog barks again, you'll have to leave." And I was like, "Really, dude?" The dog is looking at her and went, "Woof, woof."
I was being my counselor first time IRL, so that was exciting.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a better way to teach her, you know, because she does, if we're ignoring, then she does get verbal with us. But
yeah,
the bark is very specific. It's 1 or 2 barks directed at the kid as a, "Hey, you're starting to lose it." But I don't know if there's a better way to do it, because she just started doing that.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, when they result, you can say, "Listen, I appreciate you letting us know, but here's a way to do it better." So that would be when you prompt her to do the alternative behavior that you would like her to do instead. And eventually she'll start to bark, and then she'll be like, "Oh, right, I'm supposed to do the thing," right? So then you might get one woof and then the thing, and then eventually just the thing, because ultimately dogs tend to do what works. And in that situation, she clearly has, like, she's trying to alert, right? So if we kind of say, "Oh, that doesn't really work very well, but if you do this other thing, it works much better," I think she'll go to that. She's not particularly a yappy dog in general. So I think that once she has a better way of doing it, but a lot of dogs will do that. They're sometimes like, "Hey, I'm nudging you." "Oh, okay, fine. You know what? You'll listen to this." Woof.
It's just like a woof.
Yeah. It's not like she's obsessively barking. We've also realized that because she's trained to help people with anxiety, so for any not kid specific, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's where, like, their skill sets start kind of coming in, right? Like,
yeah,
it's like, "Hey, I'm really good at this job. Would you like me to do it for you too?" It's like, "Hey, we need you to dial it back a little bit." But that's them trying to be good dogs. You know, their dogs are naturally very helpful creatures, and this is like what one of our other lessons is going to go into in depth when we're really talking about how to foster that teamwork mindset, is realizing how naturally helpful dogs are. Mm-hmm. It's just that their idea of what is helpful is not always what our idea is of what's helpful.
Yeah, because yes, in that vein, Orion has taken to the paw alert.
Oh yeah.
So I work from home. So now when I get tired, he alerts me with his paw that it's time to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't listen, he tosses my laptop off the bed.
So again, one is more helpful than the other, right?
My laptop hasn't broken yet.
That's impressive. You should like write to the company and tell them that and see if they'll like send you a second one for free as like, thanks for giving us a really quotable piece of information. But yeah, it's you know, Gretel will like knock my phone out of my hand if she feels I'm not giving her a proper amount of attention. And I'm like, you know, fair. I mean, it's got to drive them crazy how much time we spend staring and talking to our plastic rectangles. It's just got to drive them crazy. They've got to be like, I think my human has an obsessive compulsive disorder. She keeps staring at this little plastic rectangle in her hand. It's really hard. She gets really fixated on it. It's really hard to interrupt the behavior. Like, I'm just really not sure what to do about this.
Odin also, when we're walking, and again, I know we will be able to work with this. I have bird feeders in my yard, so he, you know, goes to the corner and barks at the birds and the squirrels. But when we walk, he barks at them too and growls at them too. So I'm sure we'll be working on stuff, but I just think, wow, is that a young dog thing, or is that just because he's doing it here and he thinks that he's the boss of everything?
It's more that, you know, he's been bred for that. He's been bred to go and harass other animals and put them into groups and stuff. So, and again, they tend to be very vocal. My hope is that when he's in training mode, because I know this was the case with my Sheltie, when he's in training mode and working mode in the store, he's much less likely, I think, to be barky long term if we can keep his excitement level under a certain level. I think he's always going to be the kind of dog that tries to bark at birds. I think that's a perfectly understandable Sheltie behavior. But, you know, as long as we can keep him from barking at fake birds in stores and such, right? But often the working dog and the off-duty dog tend to have very different personalities. It's like my dad at the bank in his suit and tie being super strict, and then coming home, putting on his polo shirt and playing guitar and having a few drinks, just, you know, on and off duty. So we'll see as we go how we manage that, because sometimes you have to accept a certain level of stuff is just within their natural range of behaviors. Viviana, you have a question? Viviana? Okay. Well, you're still muted, sweet. So if you can unmute and talk to us when you get a chance, let us know. Anybody else?
Sorry about that.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
And then a bunch of tabs started opening on me.
I can't understand that at all. I am excellent with technology and I never have any struggles.
So I just had a question. I remember briefly we mentioned about the medication like alert. We're still trying to figure out how to really teach that to Amber. But the thing is, we're also scared that it's too early on to try and teach the trick, because we don't want her to think that she can start, you know, chewing on it. Well, not chewing on it, but also like going on the counters and stuff, right? Because we want her, because maybe the medication might be on the counter, but we don't, so we have to teach her to like grab it from the counter, but also we don't want her to be doing that on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, the first step for teaching medication things is just teaching the dog that your med time is relevant to them. So I usually recommend you get like a little pill sorter for the dog, and you put like a special treat that they only get whenever you take your meds. And whenever you take your meds, you give them their special treat. And pretty soon they'll be like, it's 8 o'clock. Is it my special treat time now? Hello? 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 I haven't had my special treat yet. Hello? And they'll just harass you. Mind you, sometimes the harassment they choose is barking, but then that's when you start, okay, you get the med time thing. Now we'll start teaching you like how to bring me my meds, and you can start teaching a more appropriate behavior. Yeah. But step one is always just to teach them that med time is relevant to them, so they start noticing. And it usually comes to, you go to get your meds and the dog just shows up and is like, hello, I cannot help but notice that you are taking your medications. And I cannot help but notice that my pepperoni is still in its container there. And you start there, right? Until after a while, you know, you're walking along and the dog suddenly gets super excited and you're like, what's up with you? And the dog's like, oh, I thought you were going to take your meds. And you're like, oh yeah, I do need to take my meds. You know, like if I don't feed my dog immediately at 8 a.m., she starts bashing her food bowl around. And it's very hard to ignore. I'm like, why are you bashing your food bowl around? Oh, look, it's 8:10. Yes, you're right. It is your breakfast.
Same here, except for dinner time.
Yeah.
I have an alarm because my brain's like, if I have a thing at, let's say, 5 o'clock, I'll set my alarm for 4:58, 2 minutes beforehand. Yeah, here, I have an alarm on my phone now. She's now programmed to the sound of the alarm.
Yeah. Oh, it's alarm time. Hello, 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 hello. And
Yeah,
they'll never let you miss it, right?
Yep.
So step one is always making it relevant to them. And this is like part of the teamwork saying, hey, we take our meds. It's time for us to go and take our meds. Here is your med. It is a piece of pepperoni, or it is a pill pocket with nothing in it, you know. But we're going to take our meds now. It is time for us to go do that. And it's fostering that you know, we're a team and we do stuff together attitude. That's so key to service dog work, because when dogs have that attitude, they really do surprise people with what they're able to do. And it's just the kind of thing that you just can't prong collar them into. Like, you can prong collar them all you like, and they're never going to suddenly go, hey, guess what? We should take our meds now. You know, like, it doesn't work. You might get a very obedient, depressed dog, but you're not going to get a dog that's like coming up with their own ways to let you know stuff you didn't even know about, right? And I often have that where my clients will be like, oh, my dog suddenly gets super restless, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, okay, can you start keeping a diary of that? Because it could be, say, the day before you have a migraine, or it could be, and when they start paying attention to the correlations, and often, yeah, it turns out the dog's restless, annoying behavior is actually predictive of something. And the dog just didn't know a better way to do it. So then we can say, hey, thanks, that's super helpful. I would rather you not tell me about my migraines by digging at my head. I don't find that helpful. Let me show you a better way to do that. But I appreciate the initiative. And that's where the training comes in, right? The motivation comes from them just wanting to be helpful. And we can be like, thank you. I can see you want to be helpful. Let me show you how to do that better. And that's where the training comes in, where we say, this is what I would like you to do. This is what would really be helpful to me. Because dogs very much go by the golden rule of, I'll just do what I would like others to do for me. But we're a completely different species. So we have to teach them the platinum rule, which is not do unto others as you would have done unto you, but it is do unto others as they would like you to do to them, even if it's totally different from the way you yourself would like to be treated. And that's a much harder rule to learn, but that's the platinum rule.
What about vice versa? When you need to give, like, for example, Ember right now needs to have some medication, and we're having a big challenge giving her tablets. We've tried like putting it in peanut butter. It's not working. We've tried honey. It's not working. We've wrapped it up with cheese. It's not working. Then one of the things that we did is we were putting her, like, someone would have to put them in, like, hold on to her kind of like between their legs, and then we kind of open her mouth and try to chuck it in. But then one of the things that happened is that the center, which is kind of like her safe space, all of a sudden she doesn't want to go in that spot, because now she's associating it to us giving the medication, and we realized that. So now we stopped that. So we just don't know anymore how to give it to her, because she's a puppy, but she's a big girl. She's strong.
Yeah. And, you know, when it comes to doing things like, you know, administering ear or eye medications, consensual care is like really super useful. You saw them doing it with like the lab in the guide dog school, right? Teaching them to either stare at a bucket of treats or put their chin on a chair to, like, while other people are doing stuff to them, as a way of giving consent. Medications is harder, because it's not like just hold still and I can put this down your throat. So finding a way to make it palatable can be challenging. I find that sometimes if they're spitting out the actual pill, sometimes you have to, like, if it's a capsule, open it up and put the powder in it. The capsule's useful, but sometimes you have to open it up and just mix the contents in with a bunch of tuna or something so they can't spit it out. With my childhood Sheltie Shadow, we had to smash his flea pill every day with a hammer. And then, like, we went at it with a mallet like it was a piece of turnip. And then we had brushed the powder onto his food because that was the only way to get him to eat it. Because at that point, the only flea prevention pill that was available that was not ivermectin was a once a day, had to take it every single day pill. So, and we couldn't give him ivermectin because the collie breeds can't have ivermectin, so it'll kill them. So we were like having to smash it and put it on his food every day. But sometimes you have to get creative. And honestly, and it sounds crazy, but sometimes the dog's like, no, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that. And sometimes you can have something, you know, they do want to eat, like a piece of ham or something, and you can say, listen, I know you don't want to eat this. I know you don't understand why I'm making you take it. I just need you to trust me that it is important for your health. And if you will swallow this thing, I will give you a big chunk of ham. You know? If you will let me put this down your throat, I will let you have this big chunk of ham. And I've had actual arguments with my dog. Gretel got a hot spot and it covered the whole side of her face. It was well beyond what I was like. Usually she gets a hot spot, I can deal with it at home. But this one I was like, yeah, no, we took her to the vet, sedated her, shaved her, and it needed to be scrubbed every day and then have a cream put on it. And she did not love that for very obvious reasons. And she'd see me get out the cloth and she'd start acting spooky. But I didn't chase her around with the cloth. I got out some very high value treats and sat there and just talked to her and said, I know you don't want this, but I will really make it worth your while. And you know, it's making your face better. And she'd be like, and I'll be like, your face is starting to feel better and you know it. And I've got some really good treats here. And she'd be like, oh. And she'd kind of go back and forth. And I'd be like, it's making your face better. I need to. I'm sorry. I know you don't like it, but it's got to be done because your face hurts. And she would eventually come in and let me do it. Unfortunately, teamwork is a lot more of a pain in the butt than the my way or the highway method, because my way or the highway is very easy. It's like, you're going to do what I say because I said so, and your feelings don't matter. So I can just pin you down and scrub your face. Whereas trying to reason with a dog that doesn't speak English and has the IQ of a 2-year-old is definitely takes a lot more patience.
She leaves. No, she leaves now.
Right? But it's worth it in the long run. It's worth it in the long run. So what kind of medication is Ember on?
Well, she just had she was spaded. She also had her hernia fixed. So she's on antibiotics, and the thing is that she still has diarrhea, so she's on another round of antibiotics. So yeah, and they're not. And then she's on a probiotic. The probiotic, we can open the capsule, we sprinkle it on her food, no problem. But now the other tablet is a different story.
Yeah, it's harder. Yeah, sometimes it's just peanut butter is sometimes useful because they have trouble getting the capsule out of it. But if it's the kind of dog that will carefully remove the pill from whatever you hide it in,
yes, she does that.
And that's usually because they're a chewer and they're like, I'm going to chew this and then it's going to taste terrible, so I'm going to take this out now. And you're like, okay, but that was kind of the whole point of me giving you that. So sometimes instead of trying to put them together, sometimes saying, listen, I have a spoonful of peanut butter here. If you will let me open up your mouth and put this thing down your throat, you can have a whole spoonful of peanut butter.
Yeah. Okay.
And eventually they'll get used to it. It's just sometimes you have to sit and you have to negotiate with them a little bit and be like, please come and do this. Here's why. And it's usually you can talk them into it.
Okay.
And I know that, like, if anybody ever listens to this recording and they're my way or the highway person, they're gonna be like, this is ridiculous. These people are talking about negotiating with a dog, like just grab it and put it down his throat. And it's like, yeah, you can, but then the dog's not gonna trust you. Giving them medications next time is harder. Like, there's a trade-off for that. And I've certainly learned and tried the my way or the highway methods, and they are certainly very convenient, because then it's like, oh great, if I don't have to worry about your feelings and I don't have to care, then I can just do what I want and to make you do what I want, and I don't have to worry about it. It's way easier for me. But long term, the dog feels differently about you. And I find that it changes the way I feel. I'm grumpier if I'm using the my way or the highway method. I start to feel entitled to the dog's good behavior. And when they don't behave properly, I feel annoyed with them. And that doesn't feel good, to feel annoyed all the time and frustrated all the time. So ultimately, I'm happier and the dog's happier if I'm just, to me, it's worth it to sit down and have a 10-minute argument with a Bernese Mountain Dog about whether or not I can put a cloth on their face. It's worth that trade-off. And sometimes people are often surprised how much dogs understand when we do sit down and talk to them about it. They don't understand words very well, but they do understand tone of voice. And sometimes just sitting down with them and looking them in the eyes and expressing empathy and then explaining to them very seriously why it's important that they do this. They're like, okay, I have no idea what you just said, but it's clearly very important to you. And you are able to do and understand a whole lot of things that I don't understand. I don't know how you make cars work or order pizza, so maybe you know about the importance of pills too. So sometimes they'll be like, fine, and they'll let you do it. But people are often surprised that it even works, that when you sit down and try to reason with them, but it seriously does sometimes. And other times you're like, okay, listen, I've tried all the nice ways. Now I'm going to have to put it down your throat. But then you really are risking breaking the trust with the dog. And I'd rather break the pill into a whole bunch of little pieces and try and mix them up with the peanut butter so they're harder to spit out or something before I would go to that way. Or just do it with the dog's consent. Yeah, I'm going to put this down your throat, but I'm going to do it with your consent, and then I'm going to like make it very, very worth your while. Does anybody have any other questions? No?
I have sort of a random health question, if that's okay.
Can you turn back into the 6:30 one? I know.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just going to go and grab some dinner first, and then I'll be back for the 6:30 Q&A. Yes. So if anybody has more questions, they can tune in then. It's in the same, this is my online office, so it's always the same link. The next lesson on Wednesday is going to be very much more about this, like building that team bond feeling. And I'm going to have some specific exercises you guys can do to help working towards that. So just so you guys know what to expect next. And it was really nice seeing you guys today. Thanks for putting up with my technical difficulties. And I'll see you guys. If you want to tune back in at 6:30, I'll be here. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Wednesday, okay?
Great. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye.